Sports Nation, welcome back. I'm Rob Kleinen. Along with me is a special guest, Derrick. Matt, how are you doing today?
Not bad, Rob. Appreciate the invite. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I do apologize. The first 95 or 100-degree day that we have, and our AC is not working, so bear with me. I apologize.
June, it's supposed to be in Kansas City.
We got our H2O. So, Matt, give a little background to our viewers out there, what you do and how you got involved in what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm the beat writer and the publisher for ChiefsDigest.com, and I've been full-time the beat writer there since 2016. Got involved with it going back to 2013. The founder of Chiefs Digest was Herbie Teope, who's now the beat writer over at the Kansas City Star, covering the Chiefs. And we had worked together at Time Warner Cable Metro Sports, and he covered the Chiefs there. He wanted to go off on his own and started his own website. And at that time, I had my own PR company. So I was his PR guy. I was his website guy. I helped him get everything off the ground. And so that was in 2013. And I just wrote part-time, occasionally, did some analytical pieces, numbers pieces on the Chiefs. And then when Herbie left in 2016 to go cover the Saints for NOLA.com, I took over the site and been doing that for the last 4 seasons. And this is season 5.
And this is full-time for you, pretty much?
Full-time now, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's been a struggle to get there, but yeah, no, it's been a full-time gig.
So exactly what do you do for the Chiefs? You follow them, you go from through the whole schedule, you follow them, what exactly is all involved in all this?
Yeah, it's a little bit different depending on the time of year, and this year particularly is a little bit different, but in season, yeah, it's there every day. The Chiefs have availability pretty much every day except for Tuesdays and Saturdays. So I'm there at the facility, at practices, whatever they got going on. And then this time of year, it's a little bit different. They don't have as much availability and everything. So this time of year, we would normally be in OTAs. So this would be a time where that would be your availabilities when you're talking to the players. This year, a little bit different, trying to set up interviews in a different way. We're doing interviews with the players and the coaches on Zoom, so doing some Zoom press conferences. But then also, just as a reporter, reaching out to others. There's other people I'm reaching out to right now, doing some feature profiles that people are going to be seeing in the next few weeks and everything. So I'm getting ready for training camp, which hopefully will go off in some fashion here in a few weeks.
So, and you're allowed access to all the players?
Yeah, I'm credentialed to cover the team. So, in season, regular basis, once they get back from training camp, we're in the locker room 3 days a week. So that's when we really get a chance to talk to the players one-on-one. They have press conferences those 3 days, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. And then I don't make all the road trips. I think I made about 6 road trips this past season, but credentialed for the press box. So cover the games from there, and then talk to the guys in the locker room afterwards.
Were you able to go to the Super Bowl?
Did go to the Super Bowl.
Really?
So that was a whirlwind experience.
Yeah. Were you down there the whole week?
Yeah, I went down. I got there Monday, and so was there for Super Bowl opening night, Monday night, which is the absolute most crazy spectacle that you will ever see. It's just absolute nonsense. I think they had 3,500 some odd people credentialed to cover it this year. And it's just absolute craziness. You've got, 25, 30 players and coaches who are there, and there's easily, for the most part, 20 reporters or more crammed around them. For guys like Mahomes, you would see maybe 50 reporters and cameras, just jammed around them. It's crazy. But then the rest of the week, a lot of it was covering the team from their hotel. They would have all the players and coaches available each morning. So going over there and then covering the game itself, which was also just a incredible experience. Being able to cover a Super Bowl, not a lot of people get to do it.
Right. This seems pretty cool. Now, do you have a background in journalism, or what's your background? Did you go to school for this?
I did. I was a journalism major at Missouri, in the broadcast sequence. So there's a few VHS tapes of me and my reporter days floating around that I try to hide.
They still have those?
I have them. I don't know if I can play all of them, but I have video recorded evidence of me being a TV reporter, which is not what anybody needs to see.
Did you want to go into broadcasting, or?
That was my original plan. I was going to go into sports broadcasting in some fashion, and when I got to the end of my college days, I was just a little bit burned out on journalism. So I ended up going into sales, and I was in public relations for the longest time. That was where I spent most of my time. I was in public relations for the Home Builders Association here in town. So, the home shows down at Bartle Hall and the parade of homes going around, when you see the new homes on tour.
Yeah.
That was me. So I did that for 10 years before I had gone over to Time Warner Cable. And I was there in PR there. I ran PR for them for a 3-state region. And it was working with Metro Sports that got me back into sports. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of getting back to my roots. I mean, this is what I had planned to do when I was a kid.
Really? So you
finally getting to do it now.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. That's cool. So as the Chiefs beat writer, you get to follow the team. You get to go on the road trips, go to the Super Bowl. What's it like to interview these high-profile players?
At first it can be a little, I'll admit it's intimidating. I mean, it took me, I would say probably easily the first year I was terrible. It really was. I mean, just because it's not even just the intimidation of being around people that you're seeing on TV all the time and all that. Some of it is just getting to be good at the job. And I had been in PR for a long time, so getting back into and using that muscle as a reporter and doing it at the highest level, because you're not, when you're covering the Kansas City Chiefs, you're not covering a college team or anything like this. You're doing it at the highest level. So that made it really, really tough. So I apologize to everybody who read the site for, I'd say at least the first year and a half. Because I look back at some of the stuff I wrote in those days, and I'm like, oh man, I would not do that now in a heartbeat. But that's, it can be fun. I mean, obviously, this is a job that I know a lot of people would love to have, and I grew up wanting to do this. It's not all glamour. There's some tough parts of it too. There's always stories that you don't want to cover, and there's things that people don't want to talk about. So there are definitely some challenges to the job. As much fun as this sounds, there's some bad days on the job too.
Really? Well, we've the Stores had you in here, and I want to say in 2018, wasn't it? Right before they went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were in here for a signing. You've got some books that you have published here. So you have special commemorative book, at last, right?
Yeah.
This is from you. You got this one right here, Patrick Mahomes, Showtime. And we had you in here for a signing.
Yeah.
And you had signed your material. So you brought 2 of these. Is there any other books or pieces that you've done?
Those are my 2 books. Everything I do now is all at ChiefsDigest.com. I've written for some other people over the years, and every once in a while, Lindy's sports magazine is going to be coming out here pretty soon. I wrote the Chiefs preview for that. So I do some work for other publications occasionally, but all my Chiefs work, for the vast majority of it, you'll find at ChiefsDigest.com.
Okay. So my boys love this one right here. So
that was a lot of fun.
How did you get all this information on Mahomes?
That was a little bit of a whirlwind project, because it was early in the 2018 season, and the publisher for this, Triumph Books, they typically do one of these every year on a player who is really kind of coming on, or a big name. And so in the 2018 season, it was in September when they decided, okay, we probably need to do something on Mahomes. This is the guy this year. So they had reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in it, and so it was early October that we finalized the deal to do the book, and then it was 29 days later was my first deadline, and this was in the middle of the season too. So
constantly changing.
It was constantly changing. It was a whirlwind trying to keep up with the rest of the job too and everything. But a lot of conversations with Mahomes, the coaches, his teammates, players. Going back to other interviews that he'd done in the past, to get back into his college days. Get back to even as a kid and through his high school career, because I think there were definitely some formative moments that really kind of set the tone for I think that person he was going to be and the player he was going to be down the road.
Now you see Mahomes on commercials. You see him doing interviews on ESPN or where you name it. How is he one-on-one? He seems so mild and so even keel and so down to earth. How is he when you're sitting there asking him questions left and right?
I would say he's one of the rare people that I think I've interviewed and talked to that what you see on camera for the most part is kind of what you get. I
Really?
mean, sometimes you'll see people that, when they do interviews and you see them on TV that they're different. I mean, it's natural that people will sometimes have not necessarily a character, but they're going to change their approach a little bit when they're on camera. He really doesn't. I mean, he's really pretty genuine. I think the only thing that you probably get when you see him in the locker room when you're talking with his teammates and when the cameras aren't there is he's a jokester. I mean, he likes to have some fun, and you get a little bit of that sense in the interviews. But you really get a lot more of it, one-on-one, and when he's with his teammates. This is a guy that likes to have a lot of fun. He's having fun at what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I think he's really genuine.
Good. I mean, it's good to hear because you see, like I said, you see him on TV, so people may think, is there another side to him? Is he just putting on a front? I'm glad to hear that he's just a genuine person, and even keel and just easy and joking around and stuff. So that's cool. And you're right. He definitely loves what he's doing.
He does.
He is he's just a fabulous player. We have reached out to on Twitter, so we're going to have some questions that some people on Twitter want to ask you. Before I get to that, I want to ask you some questions, as the beat writer. What do you think the Chiefs are going to do this year after what they did last year, especially after what they did in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, you bring back 20 of 22 starters from the Super Bowl champion, and your expectation should be that you're going to go back and do it again. And that's definitely what this team is. The biggest challenge that any defending champion has is just staying hungry, keeping that edge. And I think the Chiefs have a couple of things going for them there that's going to put them in good stead. One has been the challenge of this offseason. This is going to be tough. I mean, there's going to be some teams that I don't think probably going to benefit from them, especially for if you're a team that you're bringing a new quarterback or you're trying to do some new things on offense. Not having those 13 practices that they're missing out on with OTAs and that are minicamp and more work that the rookies are getting. I mean, that's a big deal. So you look at a team like Denver and look at Oakland that are bringing in new wide receivers. Denver's got a young quarterback. This offseason's big for that. And if you don't have that, I mean, that really puts you behind the 8 ball. Chiefs don't have any of these. They don't really have any key players. Really, the only one you can say that they're bringing in to trying to fit into this offense is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think it's easier for a running back to kind of fit in, and especially what the Chiefs are going to ask of him, than it would be for a lot of other players. So I think that's going to be a big part of their advantage going into this season, is that continuity, the fact that they've got that consistency. But the other advantage I think also is just Andy Reid. I mean, I've asked him about this, because he's the kind of guy that isn't afraid to reach out to other coaches. And I'd asked him if maybe he'd reached out to other coaches that he's worked with, or even key coaches managers that he knows in other sports that have gone back to back for advice. And he's like, no, really what he's going back to is his experience with the Packers. When they went to back-to-back Super Bowls. They didn't win them both, but they went to back-to-back games. And he really thought that the approach that Mike Holmgren used on those two teams really worked. And that's what he's using. And I think you get a sense of, from talking to players right now and talking to some of the assistants, Andy Reid's challenging them by telling them, you know what? You had a really good team last year. You guys were really good. But he's like, you can be better. This defense can be better than it was a year ago. You guys didn't play very well first half of the season. You can improve on that. He's like, this offense, he thinks it can be better. So he's challenging these guys, and I think that that's something that you have to have. You have to have that, that little bit of that stick in the carrot. You've got to have the coach that's out there willing to challenge these guys. And I think that so far what we've heard this offseason, I think they're responding to that.
It's going on what you said about the defense. I think last year at one point they were like 6-4, and then they won 9 in a row to win the Super Bowl. What do you think about the defense and the drafts that the draft picks they had this year? What's your take on that?
Yeah, if this defense is able to pick up where it left off, because they were over the last 6 to 8 games of the season arguably one of the best defenses in the league. And and that's where that Steve Spagnuolo thought they could be at some point during the season. Now, he thought it would happen a lot earlier. I mean, he thought that it might take about 4 weeks into the season before they kind of figured out who they were. It took more like 8 to 10 weeks to kind of figure out who they were. But once they did that, they really got into a rhythm and a groove. If they can come out and maintain that, which, once again, I mean, with the continuity that they have, I think you got to have some optimism that they can. I think the real challenge with them is going to be, some of the numbers, especially in the defensive backfield, because Bashaud Breeland is probably going to be facing a suspension. We don't know for how long. It looks like there's a 4-game suspension that's coming for sure, but with the other issues that he's had, it could be longer than that. And after that, you've got a lot of young guys and a lot of rookies that they're going to be depending on in that backfield. If L'Jarius Sneed, as a rookie, can come in and contribute, that would be huge. I mean, they're going to need some young guys, whether it's him, Rashad Fenton, who was a rookie last year. They're going to need some quality playing time from some of these young guys. So, and that's going to be tough because, as we talked about, this offseason, especially for rookies and young players, it's going to be hard. But the Chiefs at some point this season are going to be dependent on those guys. And I think a big part of how their defense performed is going to be how those guys performed.
So, going on the picks that we had this year, right? It was, were you surprised with the number 1 pick that we had?
I was only surprised because I thought that if they went running back with the first pick, that it would probably be trading out of the first round and looking and maybe circling back to that in the beginning part of the second round, maybe picking up some more picks. I think that Brett Veach would have liked to have tried that, but the market wasn't there. There wasn't really an opportunity to make that trade. So when they decided they're locking in at 32, I mean, it really is, who is the player that we think is going to be, the guy who can help us the most. And this was Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the guy that they circled there. And you look at it, and it makes sense in a lot of ways to me, because I go back to the first half of the 2018 season when they had Kareem Hunt. This offense averaged more than 7 yards a play when he was on the field with this offense, with this quarterback. And that's ridiculous. I mean, that would be the most yards per play by any offense since before 1950 in the NFL. That's just ridiculous. If a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire can come in and can do the same kind of things that Kareem Hunt did and make the offense that efficient, to me, I think they'd be almost unstoppable.
From what I heard is once they selected this running back. From what I heard, there were many coaches and GMs that literally threw their pencils and everything down because they were upset. I don't think anyone expected us to draft this running back. And he wasn't even in the top 3 of the running backs that were available. There was that running back out of Georgia, and then there's a running back out of Ohio State.
Yep.
And I can't remember the other one, but yeah, this LSU running back was not even in the top 3.
Yeah, but once again, it goes back to what's the perfect fit for the right team. I mean, this to a degree feels like kind of things that the Patriots always seem to pull on the NFL. It seems like the right player always falls to the Patriots late in the first round.
Right.
And also, I mean, I think it's the same way that probably a lot of teams felt when they saw Patrick Queen go to Baltimore. It's like, oh, that's the absolute wrong player to go to the wrong team. That was the same thing with, I think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is that it's something that you look at it, and yeah, a lot of people would have said that he's not the top running back maybe in the draft. Maybe he's not a first-round pick. But when you look at that player going to Andy Reid and this offense, I think that's when you had a lot of people around the league who were like, oh yeah, this is not going to go well for the rest of these defenses.
Do you think he's going to jump right in and be a huge contributor? Like, is he going? You think he's going to start? You think they're going to do a split time with Williams, or is Williams going to be their main guy right now?
I think I still think it's probably up in the air. I mean, I kind of feel the same way at this point that I felt during going into the 2018 season or 2017 season when Kareem Hunt was a rookie. Was that the opportunity's there for him to get the playing time. He's just going to have to earn it. They've got a competitive backfield. They've got a lot of guys back there, so they're not depending on him having to go out and win that job. But if he's going to win it, he's going to have to earn it. So, I think he's got the potential. I mean, he's got the ability. He's got, I think, the physicality. Got the athleticism. I think he's got the right attitude from what we've heard so far. It would not surprise me if you see that when they start getting back onto the field. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Damian Williams is the number one running back. But I can also see this guy getting a lot of time with the first team early on. And by the time the first week of the season comes around, he might very well be getting the majority of touches.
So, switching gears, so we're talking about the running backs and the running back core that we have. Let's go to the receiving core. We have Robinson, we have Watkins. They're both under a one-year contract. We got Hill, we got Pringle, we have Dieter, right? Derrick Dieter, right? We have Hardman. So, what do you think is going to happen with that? Do you think? I have a feeling that we will lose Robinson probably and Watkins next year. So, and we did draft a receiver this year. So, what do you think is going to happen over the course of the year for these other players?
Yeah, when you look at the receiver position, it really is, they just kind of, it's the, run it back attitude. I mean, they're bringing back some guys that they know they're probably only going to have for 1 year. And then, they're going to have to probably make some adjustments for 2021. I think what they're banking on is that, Hill and Hardman are a good enough duo that you're going to be able to build back around them. So you're not going to be looking at 2021 to find even a number 2 receiver. You're really only going to be maybe looking to find number 3, number 4. If that. They've also got some young guys. They signed some undrafted young guys that I think have got some real potential, especially maybe some guys as far as special teams goes, returning kicks, that kind of thing. And they've done a pretty good job of identifying young talent. Gary Dieter's another guy, undrafted guy that could stick with this. Byron Pringle, another guy, undrafted that's made this team. So, I think it's going to be pretty competitive for the last couple of spots at that receiver position. I think they feel pretty good about their depth there. But I think that, like you mentioned, a big part of it is that they've got a couple of guys that probably won't be back next season when you look at the salary cap and you look at probably the market returning to more normal situation next year. And in that case, Hill and Hardman are who you're banking on to be the future of that position.
Now this year, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the roster has increased 2 spots. So instead of 53, we have 55. They're allowed 55. Is that going to help keep more receivers, or are they going to go somewhere else and keep more at other positions?
Yeah, one of the roster changes is going to be an offensive line, and that's going to be on game day you're going to be able to have an extra active person, and that's going to be an offensive line position, by rule. So that's probably one spot where you're definitely going to see teams being able to keep some extra. It's those extra spots on the practice squad that are going to be kind of an advantage for I think a team like the Chiefs because they're a team that's had an abundance of talent, and so being able to keep a couple of extra bodies that normally they'd have to say goodbye to, especially because this is a team that is to a degree going to be in a rebuild mode in 2021. They're going to have a lot of young guys playing in 2021. And that's where there's going to be an advantage to having being able to keep a couple of young guys around this year that you may have to count on to play some quality playing time next season. Past rules, you had a 53-man roster, and then you have a 10-player practice squad. And those guys truly, their job is to practice. The numbers are there to really be able to provide the team with the depth, to be able to practice, first-team offensive versus a second-team offense and defense. Those guys can move up. There's really weird rules where it comes to as far as they can move up, but then if you're ever going to send them back down to the practice squad, you've got to expose them to waivers so any team can claim them. But yeah, you can pull from that practice squad group, but for the most part, those are guys that they're generally first, second, third year players. So these are guys without a lot of experience, who in the past, wouldn't have been able to get that kind of experience. So it's good to be able to have them around and beat guys that you can, even if they're not playing this year, for the Chiefs, usually they'll keep a third quarterback in that practice squad. But they'll keep depth for not only for this year, being a guy like if a receiver goes down, they've got somebody they can bring up. But they also like to use it to groom players for the future. That's how some of their offensive linemen, that they've grown over the last few years. They've had some wide receivers where they keep them on the practice squad for a season or two to see if they can develop them into real talent.
So can a player stay on the practice squad for so many years? Can it be on their whole career?
The rules are a little complicated. Basically, you can be on a practice squad as long as you haven't had, I believe it's 3 fully accrued seasons, which accrued seasons are also kind of weird to figure out. Generally speaking, it's a player can be on a practice squad, anytime during the first 3 seasons in the league. like I said, there's some weird squirrely things. Tyler Bray ended up on a practice squad last year for the Bears, and I think Tyler Bray feels like he's been in the league for 10 years. So there's some weird rules, but everyone's, it all depends on how many accrued seasons you
So you can actually you can play actual games, and then all of a sudden something happens and they put you on the practice squad for some reason, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can bounce back and forth. So they've had plenty of guys who have done that.
So it's not like baseball. If they bump you to the minors, then you're down there in the minors, and you can only get two chances to get to the majors, and once that's done, I mean, you're done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good comparison. You can bounce back and forth to the practice squad. You're really the only tough part of it is that anytime that you're sending a player from the active roster down to the practice squad, you have to expose them to waivers, which means any of the other 31 teams in the league can claim that player. And the Chiefs have actually gotten some players, acquired players that way. When teams have tried to sneak them to the practice squad,
really,
the Chiefs have grabbed them.
And that's their player until they put them on the practice squad then?
Exactly.
Okay, all right, well, let's try to go to Twitter here, and we will ask some questions. With the non-OTA season, how much of an advantage will the Chiefs have over the rest of the league going into training camp and the season, considering they are returning most of their squad? And you, I think you had mentioned something about that, so...
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous advantage. I mean, it really is. Like I said, the toughest part is going to be for the rookies, because those are the players in particular. I mean, that's so crucial for them going into training camp, because the number of guys that I've talked to who over the years have said if they did not have that off-season workout before they got to training camp, they'd be completely lost. And rookies, between the rookie mini camp and then the OTAs, veteran camp, they normally get 16 practices in before they go to training camp. And this year they're going to have 0. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge. But the fact that the Chiefs aren't going to be really counting on necessarily any rookies that they're depending on to come in and start immediately. There are not any that they're really, outside of Edwards-Helaire, that they're really trying to fit in offensively. I think that's an advantage. But you look at the rest of the continuity, and the coaching staff big too, because normally if you're a Super Bowl team, you've lost guys out of your coaching staff. Everybody's back this year. So I think that's all together. I mean, I think that's a tremendous advantage for the Chiefs this season.
So just explain to those out there that OTA, it's abbreviated for what?
Off-season training activities.
All right, and so off-season training activities, is that a mandatory?
It's optional. Like, normally what the teams get back in mid-April under normal circumstances is when they start coming back and starting to work. And then April is just all rehab, classroom, stretching, workouts, weights. That's the only thing they can do. They can't get out on the field. After a couple of weeks of that, then they can start doing individual drills. And then when you would get into the beginning of May is normally when you'd have your rookie mini camp. And that's when all your rookies would come in. And you'd also have usually about 40 to 50 tryout players who will come in. And it's kind of their just opportunity to come in and try to impress the team, show them that they think that they can get a contract. So get 3 days to improve themselves. And then after that, so you're talking about mid-May in normal seasons, is when these OTAs would start. And they're truly just like practices. They would have 3 of these over a 3-week period, 10 total. One would have 4 of them. So you have those 10 practices over 3 weeks that are just like a regular practice. Usually about 2 to 3 hours. And they would do all of these at the home facility. Those are completely optional. So you have had on occasion veterans that don't show up for them. Chris Jones didn't participate in the offseason program last year, so he didn't show up for any of the OT pre-A practices. And then at the very end, so in June, which would really be about next week under a normal calendar for the Chiefs, they would be having the 3-day mandatory veteran mini camp. And that's when all the players would be coming in. Normally they're all ready for the OTAs, but the mandatory mini camp is mandatory. Once again, Christian didn't show up for that last year, so he was fined and could have been fined for that. But that's all the work. And then once they're done with that, so once you're done with that by mid-June, the players typically go their own ways. I mean, that's 6 weeks off really for them before the beginning of training camp, and that's when you see a lot of players do their own personal things. There's a lot of guys who get married during that period of time. There's probably I know there's a lot of guys who try to make sure that maybe they can have kids during that period of time. So that's a little bit harder to schedule, but that's 2 weeks is kind of their time.
So training camp is usually in St. Joe, Missouri. This year I heard that they are not going to have it up there. it's going to be at this facility here in Kansas City. Is that correct?
Yeah, the NFL has come down and said that none of the teams are going to be able to go to third sites for their training camps this year. So they're going to keep them all at their own facilities. Obviously, that's a big part of that is just about trying to prevent the spread with the coronavirus in the situation they've got. It's disappointing because St. Joe has done such a great job of supporting that training camp over the years, and it's an important fundraiser for the athletic department there. And honestly, it's been great for the Chiefs too. I mean, Andy Reid loves going away for camp. I mean, they like the camaraderie of it. Not every team does it. There's only about 10 or 11 teams that still go away for training camp. Most teams do them at their own facilities.
And that's why I was asking you is what is the purpose of going away? I mean, is it just to be secluded and no distractions with family or whatever?
That's really it. I mean, that's what Andy Reid likes about it, is that it is a way to get players away. They're to concentrate. There's not a lot of outside distractions, so you're able to kind of get them there. You got them there all day, so you can have them for classes, for practices. They eat together. But he also loves the camaraderie of it. I mean, I think that's kind of the whole brotherhood of football that Andy really likes, is the idea that you go back to a college dorm, you're all staying together. I mean, he feels like it does build that brotherhood and camaraderie.
Cool, awesome. All right, let's do another question here. What are the chances we get Chris Jones signed to a long-term deal? Now, they franchised him this year, and I don't think he's very happy. But correct me.
From a contract standpoint, Chris hasn't been happy in a long time. I mean, this is really 18 months now they've been going into this, because coming off of the 2018 season when they had those 15.5 sacks, Chris Jones wanted a new contract, and he wanted to be paid like one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So he wanted a new deal last offseason. They couldn't get it done. They franchise tagged him this year. They have until July 15th to get a long-term deal done. Then after that, he's either playing under the franchise tag or he's not playing at all. Those are really the only two options.
Now, isn't the franchise tag, they take the top 5 of that position, and they average it out, and then they pay him the average of the top 5. So, I mean, for 1 year, he's getting paid. It's not like they're paying him, the 20th, play position. You know what I'm saying? He's getting the top 5 average. Wouldn't you be happy with that?
But getting a long-term deal for him, that could be a huge deal, because he goes out there in 2020 and gets hurt. Then the prospects of getting a long-term deal for $100 million upwards and getting that guaranteed money of maybe 40 to 50 million plus, it goes away if he gets hurt.
So, to go back to that question, what do you think the chances that they get a deal done this year?
It's not zero, but I think it's pretty close to zero. And it's not necessarily, I think, the fault of either side. I mean, the biggest part of it right now is just simply where the NFL is as a business. No one is giving out long-term deals because they don't know what the salary cap is going to be next year. They don't know what the economic fallout of the pandemic is going to be. They don't know if there's going to be fans in the stands, what their revenues are going to be this year. So you even look at free agency back in March, and no team was handing out long-term deals. Even most of the contracts that you saw that were 3 or 4 year deals, they're built as deals with a 1 year out that teams can get out of if they want to. Really, the biggest multi-year deal that was done was with DeForest Buckner and the trade going from San Francisco to Indianapolis. But that was very early in the process, and I think that was the advantage, because once everything kind of hit in mid-March, teams have shut it down. And right now, that's the complication. I mean, even if the Chiefs wanted to try and trade Chris Jones and bring in some draft picks, there's no other team in the league who would be interested in giving him a long-term deal right now, because nobody's got the money to do it, and they don't feel like that they've got the security to do it.
All right, so going on the contract, Patrick Mahomes is going to be coming up with a new contract here shortly.
Yep.
So, and everyone is everyone is assuming he's going to be the highest player in the NFL, somewhere of like 200 million. I mean, I'm assuming more.
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend on the number of years of the contract. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if it's 200 million or more, especially if it's at least a 5 or a 6 year contract. And that's gone up kind of astronomical in the last 12 to 18 months. I would say 18 months ago, when you were talking to people about what Mahomes' new contract was going to be, it was, okay, maybe he's going to get $200 million over 6 or 7 years. Well, now you look at, where quarterback contracts are going, and under the new collective bargaining agreement, if the salary cap goes up, which it's certainly going to be some tricky things going on with that, but now you're looking maybe at $200 million for 4 or 5 years being a possibility. It's going to be a challenge. Now, the interesting thing about Mahomes' contract is that with that new collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners, is that there's some language in there about being able to tie a player's salary to the salary cap, and one of those deals hasn't been done before. And I would not be surprised at all if Patrick Mahomes is the first one, in that he's going to can tie his salary to the salary cap. So if the salary cap goes up astronomically in the next few seasons, he's going to get more money, and that might make it a little bit more nebulous about what the total deal is for. But I think his contract's going to be groundbreaking one way or the other.
And with that being said, isn't that going to affect the Chris Joneses and the Robinsons and the Watkins down the line on when they're going to when their contract's going to be renewed? I mean, where are we going to get all this money?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why you especially you look at the prospects of giving out Patrick Mahomes a lot of money, and then two, look at the fact that you're already paying a pass rusher in Frank Clark. You already paid him, and that's a little bit too about the issue between the Chiefs and Chris Jones is that the Chiefs did pay a pass rusher that wasn't Chris Jones, and it was a guy from outside coming in. That's kind of that's kind of tinkered with things a little bit too. But you're right. I mean, there's only so much of the pie to go around, and it does make it more difficult to get a deal done with a Chris Jones and a Patrick Mahomes at the same time. That said, it's possible, but at some point you got to decide where you're spending your money. And if you're paying a lot of your money in Mahomes, you got Clark, you got a big deal with Tyreek Hill, you'd be giving one to Chris Jones. You've got the possibility of having a lot of money tied up in 5 or 6 players. And that means that at some point, you're going to be missing out on, paying a guy like a Dan Sorensen. You're paying a DeMarcus Robinson. Paying some of these guys who are backups who are making multi-million-dollar deals. You're going to have to forego that in favor of young players who aren't making very much.
So with everything that's happening in the world today, we have COVID, and it's the OTAs are non-existent now for this year. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen, or what have you heard when preseason starts? Are there going to be fans? Are they going to play in empty stadiums? Have you heard any talk within the Chiefs organization or the NFL of how they're going to handle this?
Yeah, the NFL. I mean, if you look at what they have done since mid-March, their real strategy and what they've said is that they want to plan for business as usual and then adapt if need be. You saw them go through free agency, and they didn't really make any changes in March. Then when you got to the draft, you saw them go ahead with the draft, but you saw them make changes. Now when we got the OTAs, it was the same thing. We saw them saying, we're going to stick with the schedule. We're going to do these virtual workouts, but we're not going to have players coming in. So all along the way, they've done this, and when they came out with the schedule in May, and the fact that the NFL came out with a regular schedule, that it's not anything, we heard at one point that maybe they were going to stack a lot of intra-conference games up early, so the Chiefs would be playing like NFC teams the last few weeks of the season, and they'd be saving all of their divisional games till late. The fact the NFL didn't do that tells you that they're hoping for a full 16-game schedule. That it's going to be business as usual. But I think you've asked the magic question: is that are there going to be fans in the stands? That's where everything can still shift. I know the NFL, the Chiefs, they're hoping that there's going to be fans in the stands, come preseason, come week 1, but they're absolutely preparing for there not to be. And I think you probably have to kind of brace yourself for the fact that, that might not be possible when they get into the season.
And of course, if that does happen, then the revenue, that the Chiefs take in for players and stuff will be, I'm assuming, drastically reduced, which I'm assuming will hurt us in the long run. Will hurt every team.
Yeah, that's the real tricky thing because, the NFL, the salary cap is directly tied to revenues. So every year the salary cap has gone up because the NFL continues to make more money. They get more money from their TV deals, they get more money from ticket sales, merchandise. Every piece of the pie has been growing. This year, they're facing a possibility where probably might not grow. In fact, it may contract. And if that's the case, that means that the salary cap could contract. And there's been a lot of projections, and no, the fact is that nobody really knows right now, what's going to happen to the salary cap. There's been some drastic, that it could go from a $200 million cap to maybe losing $75 million off of that. I think that's probably a little on the high end, but the prospect is there that the salary cap could go down. And yeah, that's not what the NFL's been built for. I mean, the NFL is built for the fact that they're making money every single year, and the salary cap goes up every single year. The Chiefs already have more commitments towards salary cap for 2021 than they can afford right now, and that's before they even get a deal done with Patrick Mahomes or Chris Jones. So yeah, I mean, it would affect every team in the NFL, but for a team like the Chiefs that would continue to live near the top of that salary cap, if the salary cap were to contract next year, it would be a serious crimp in their plans.
Really? That's not good to hear.
Not good, but like I said, I mean, it's going to affect every franchise. Yeah. But the Chiefs they're in a really tough spot compared to some other teams when it comes to the future cap space.
All right, let me go to another Twitter question. What Chiefs rookie do you think will have the most success this upcoming season?
I think it's probably easy to point to Clyde Edwards-Helaire just because I think that he's the best positioned. He's going to get some opportunities. I mean, like I said, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if he does win the starting job right out of the bat. And I think he's going to fit into this offense really, really well. But the other guy that we mentioned earlier, I think that we really keep an eye on is L'Jarius Sneed. I think that they're going to need some cornerbacks, young guys, to play early in the season, and certainly by, I think, the end of the season. And I think Sneed's the guy that they're depending on. He could play a lot of different positions. He's not just a corner. They could play him at safety. They could play him in the slot. He can drop back. He could, really comparatively, he really, compares favorably with what Kendall Fuller did for this team last year. And if he could be a kind of a guy that they could slide into that spot opposite of Tyrann Mathieu, that would allow Mathieu to continue to do what he did so well last year, which was basically the lineup wherever he needs to, and play a lot near the line of scrimmage. If they get a guy like Sneed to develop, I think that would be key. The other guy, Willie Gay, is obviously the other guy to keep an eye on. Linebacker's a position of need for this team. They're, right now they're talking about really kind of easing him in, so I don't think that he's going to be the starter in the sense that he's going to displace an Anthony Hitchens at this point. But could he be a guy out there that is regularly as part of, their substitution packages where he's out there with Hitchens in a two linebacker look? Absolutely. And they really like how the physicality of Willie Gay, you've heard him described as a violent hitter. They really think that they think this is a first round talent that they got in the second round, just because of some of the discipline issues he's had.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else, anything that you can think of that the viewers would want to know from someone that's inside the organization?
Yeah, and I've covered this team for a few years now, and I gotta say that, and I've talked with other reporters about this as well, guys who've covered the team a lot longer than I have. This is just one of the best locker rooms I think that this team has had in a long time. Certainly in the time that I've been there. It's a group that they all seem to get along really, really well. It's a group that I think interacts with the community really, really well. You've got a lot of guys that, they have passion. They're tough guys. But I think they got a pretty good mix of leadership on this team. And, that's why they won last year. I think that the Chiefs have been trying hard to build, since Brett Veach took over the job, one of the things that he's been really trying to do has been to build a certain type of culture with this team. And they really like what they've done right now. And it's been a struggle. They've been trying to build this since Andy Reid got there. And it's been baby steps. And, but this locker room that they've got right now, it's the time that I've covered with the team, it's certainly the best. And talking with other reporters who've covered the team longer and who've covered other franchises, they'll say the same thing. It's one of the things I think that, obviously that comes across, and I think fans like about this, is that it's a good group of players. They like each other. They care about the team and about the city, and I think that shows through, and I think it also filters into the play you see on the field.
So, two more questions. The first question is your prediction on their record this season.
Yeah, first time I went through the schedule when it came out, I came out to 13-3, and a big part of that is because Andy Reid's really got this team out to hot starts. They've gone out to 4-0 starts the last few seasons, and they're able to get out to a 4-0 start this year, going to Baltimore in Week 3. That's going to be a big deal because after that, I think in the first half of the season, the only game I'm circling is outside of that as being a difficult one is that trip to Buffalo on a Thursday night, which just chalk it down. I mean, they're losing that game. Thursday night games are terrible for road teams, so that's not a good matchup. But and then you've got that stretch with Tampa Bay and New Orleans late in the season where they're going on the road. Other than that, the schedule really comes out pretty favorably for them. So I think if they're able to get out to a good start, that Baltimore game is probably the difference between a 13-3 and a 12-4 team. And it's also probably going to be the difference between, home field advantage or not. Yeah.
Yes, we did a video early on about, our predictions, and I had them 13-3. I had them winning against Buffalo, losing at Baltimore, just because it's Baltimore. And I also agree. I think that Baltimore game is going to decide first or second seed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Tampa Bay. You got Brady going to Tampa Bay. You think they're going to win?
I think they will. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that team comes together. There's a lot of different ways that could go. I mean, and Tampa Bay's trying to put together a super dream team in an offseason where they don't have an offseason. So I think that could be a real challenge for them.
Well, they tried to do that in Cleveland, too. And it fell apart.
Everybody thought Cleveland was going to be in the AFC title game.
Yeah.
Nope, that did not work out real well.
All right, one more question. You think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year?
I would probably make money by betting against it just because it is so hard to do, and I don't think that people probably truly appreciate how hard it is to go back-to-back, particularly in the NFL. But if there's a team in a situation that could do it, this team could. I mean, it helps that I think that Baltimore is their biggest competition in the AFC, and I think that one of those two teams is going to win the title. So they got like a 50-50 shot in my book.
The only thing I have with Baltimore is last year Jackson ran. He ran. This year I think defenses are going to be geared for, number one, him running. They're going to load the the block up and make him and force him to pass. Do you think they're still going to be very powerful? Because last year he ran everywhere.
Yeah.
The defenses were really caught off guard until late in the season when there's seeing tape and stuff.
I think that the one advantage is, guys, that they have gotten him some help in the backfield, so they're going to be able to spread the ball a little bit more. I don't think they're going to have to depend on him to run as much. But Baltimore's got a very, very favorable schedule too. That's the toughest thing, is that looking at that schedule, I mean, it's very easy to see Baltimore going 14-2 or better. I mean, the Chiefs game, outside of that, they don't have much of a challenge this year. I mean, yeah, they've got the Steelers that they'll have to deal with, but that's also a team that you got a lot of questions about. It's going to be a really good team, for no other reason than they've got the best defense in the AFC. Chiefs can have a good defense too, but Baltimore really added some pieces to that should help them. So they've got the exact right offense to complement with that defense. They got some great coaching. So. I mean, the Baltimore's biggest challenge is they can't fall down in games. They can't fall behind early. That's what they did in the playoffs, and it cost them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for the viewers out there, if anybody wants to get any of your material, is there a website that they can go to, or can they contact you on Twitter?
Go to ChiefsDigest.com. You'll be able to read all my stories there. And actually, going to be having up a link here pretty soon where you're going to be able to buy autographed copies of the books. So hopefully by the time people see this on YouTube, that will be available. And you can also go to TriumphBooks.com, and they've got all these available there for shipping.
We don't have any in the store, so I'm going to have to get some.
We can help you out.
Because, what? Actually, people come in and ask for it. So I'm going to have to get some.
Glad to hear that, yeah.
So all the links will be available down below. It's been an honor. I really appreciate you coming in, sitting down, answering questions, especially since our AC is out.
Not a problem.
We are pushing through to do this video. I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to do this. Any last thing you would like to say?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to come down here. Love the stuff that you guys do. I've come down here for a few of the autograph signings to catch up with the players, and just really love what you do for the community. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. For those out there, please go to the website. The link will be below. Follow him on Twitter. This guy is full of Chief knowledge. If you want to know anything,
You try.
this is the guy. I appreciate everyone out there watching, taking time to watch this video to learn more about Matt Derrick. In closing, just everyone, with everything happening in the world, stay safe, be a blessing in someone's life, be a miracle in someone's life. You know what? If you love one another, there would be no hate. So God bless, thank you, and we will see you next time.